Veterans Day is the day our nation thanks our military veterans and families for their service and sacrifice. But too often, thank you for your service hasn't equated to veterans getting the benefits and care they've earned. That's especially true of veterans of color. In a year-long investigation, a collaboration with NBC News and 6 of our NBC local stations all across the country, we deep dive into the ways this country is trying to right one of its biggest wrongs. Anchored from our NBC station in San Diego, one of the largest military cities in the world, here is American Vets, Benefits, Race, and Inequality.
Deployed and denied.
A lot of it was, I believe, racially motivated.
Black veterans returning home from their service say discrimination at the VA kept them from getting the benefits they rightfully deserve.
Yeah, this is another war of fighting for what is rightfully mine.
NBC journalists across the country investigated the allegations and serious shortfalls at the Veterans Administration, what we found, and how, since our reporting, progress is being made.
Our investigation has taken a year and resulted in the release of 18 million new documents from the VA. It shows the battle for fair veterans benefits, regardless of race, is nowhere near over. Thanks for joining us. I'm Monica Dean.
And I'm Mark Mullen. So it's been 75 years since the desegregation of the U.S. military, and there are now about 2 million black vets in the U.S. But some say black veterans say even after they serve, they have a tough time getting the benefits they earn, benefits they deserve. That means less money and fewer educational benefits for generations of black families.
NBC's Lucy Bustamante starts us off with American Vets, Benefits, Race, and Inequality.
This is the love language of New Orleans, professed on this day for World War II veteran Lawrence Brooks. 112 years old, this is how the World War II Museum celebrated the nation's oldest surviving veteran, serving 5 years in the Army in the Pacific.
Happy birthday, Mr. Brooks.
Oh, Lord, he loved the victory bells. He used to say, I can't wait to see them girls.
His daughter Vanessa, his caretaker in his final years.
How did it feel to see your father celebrated like that?
It put a smile on his face, and that was mainly what it was all about.
The status of oldest veteran earned him national attention, and on Veterans Day of 2021, a call from the president himself.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes, hello. Happy Veterans Day.
I know. Well, thank you. That's why I called you. You deserve to be called on Veterans Day.
Oh, thank you so much for calling.
2 months after that call, Vanessa's father passed away.
Oh, God, help me. He was my hero. He loved everyone. And I am so proud to be his daughter.
But of all the honors bestowed on her dad that day, there was one well-intentioned act from a local community college that Vanessa says broke her heart. An honorary degree for a man who never got the chance to go to college in the segregated South.
He didn't achieve this. He always wanted to go to school.
Okay.
He never got the opportunity to go to school.
The GI Bill of 1944 promised all veterans returning home from war an education along with housing and unemployment insurance, all meant to create a strong middle class in America. Historian Richard Rothstein.
In practice, African Americans had very, very little opportunity to use the GI benefits that the GI Bill provided throughout the South. In the North, it was somewhat better.
A study by Brandeis University projects, based on limited available data from the VA, that descendants of World War II veterans lost $80,000 in economic opportunity.
African Americans never gained that wealth, and therefore the effects of that policy still perpetuate the inequality of today.
This might not be my generation's fault, but it is absolutely my generation's opportunity to fix.
Democratic Congressman and veteran Seth Moulton and fellow House member Jim Clyburn introduced a new bill that would offer descendants of World War II veterans an education and housing. Opponents said it was too costly, and it failed in the last Congress.
This is no giveaway. This is to restore the rights of those people who never got them.
Clyburn's compromise bill is the VA Housing Forever Act. It would focus only on the housing benefit that would allow descendants of veterans, regardless of race, to use the loan. The new Republican chair of the House Veterans Affairs Committee says he will consider it, calling past racism deplorable and saying that they will attempt to right this wrong. But some veterans aren't waiting for Congress to agree.
The GI Bill is the reason that I have my education. It's the reason that I have health care. So I know how consequential the obstruction around these benefits can be.
And they're taking on disparities beyond just housing and education benefits. Veteran Richard Brookshire of the nonprofit Black Veterans Project worked with Yale Law School, which sued the VA on behalf of Vietnam veteran Conley Monk Jr. over decades of medical benefits being denied.
Took me 40 years altogether.
It was through that landmark litigation and access to VA documents that they found Black veterans were getting disability claims denied at a higher rate than whites.
And we were able to glean that over the course of the last 20 years, there were statistically significant disparities. One as striking as a 29% greater likelihood of denial for PTSD claims.
In a statement to NBC News, the VA admits the disparities, but it says they're working to bridge the gap.
I think that there's an education gap when you're coming out of the military to even understand the breadth of the benefits that you can be afforded.
Back in New Orleans, Vanessa realized when she became her father's caretaker, there were other benefits that he was missing out on. He had only been receiving less than $100 a month in pension for decades.
When my dad told me $91, I knew something deep down in my spirit. No, this is not right.
VA records requested by NBC News show it wasn't until she reapplied for him at 105 years old that his pension increased by $700 a month. The VA continued to increase his payments, some retroactively. And only 2 months before his funeral, he finally received just over $2,000 a month.
I truly believe he would have been getting $91 until the day he died had I not went down there.
What do you hope happens?
I hope that they could correct the wrong and make it right. Not just for my family, but for at least millions of Black veterans that were denied.
Denied, but she prays not forgotten, and that maybe her father's enduring legacy will help other veterans in their battle for better benefits.
He would always say, I don't look at color, baby, because we all bleed the same color blood.
Since that report, NBC News has stayed on top of the Department of Veterans Affairs. In the process, we've uncovered new information that reveals just how persistent discrimination in the benefits awards process continues to be.
In November, we received 18 million records for the last 20 years. It paid a stark contrast in benefits. Between 2003 and 2023, 23.9% of Black vets were denied VA disability claims, whereas 19.1% of whites were denied. That is according to an analysis by NBC News data analyst Lucia Walenkas. And among veterans diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, 40% of Black vets were denied PTSD benefits. Only 30.7% of white vets were denied.
At the 2023 Philadelphia Veterans Parade, we interviewed the founder of the Historical Veterans Museum in Philadelphia's Parker Hall, which was the original USO for Black World War II veterans. We asked her about these recent findings.
The fact that these veterans fought and they knew they had inequalities, they fought for us to be equal this time. So it's really bad to see that that's still going on.
We are still waiting for a report from the VA's newly formed equity team announced by the VA in June to illuminate gaps in VA health care and benefits for Black veterans, women, and LGBTQ veterans.
Agency equity team is an important first step in that, or next step in that matter. We're obviously looking very much forward to that work accelerating and making sure that we get to the bottom of this so that, as I say, every veteran can ensure they get access to the benefits and the care that they've earned.
But Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton, who is working on legislation to help black vets, says the VA still has a big problem.
I don't want to just assume that the VA is racist, but certainly the results of this study suggest that there's a pretty serious problem.
A Connecticut veteran who is suing the government for damages was in federal court earlier this month in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Conley Monk Jr. filed a lawsuit against the VA last November over racial disparities in benefits programs that his legal team says caused emotional distress. Kyle Jones with NBC Connecticut has the story.
It took Conley Monk 40 years to get access to his VA benefits. Right here on November 2nd, a federal judge heard arguments over the government's motion to dismiss Monk's lawsuit. We spoke to his team and Monk about the case.
This is a wonderful day to know that we have a chance to get some sort of justice.
It was a day that Conley Monk Jr. has been waiting for. The Vietnam veteran was in federal court after years of what his Yale legal team says was discrimination for benefits by the Department of Veterans Affairs.
I couldn't get any housing benefits, and what hurted me the most was my family. My kids was unable to get educational benefits.
Monk is among thousands of black veterans historically denied health, education, and housing benefits at a much higher rate than white veterans. Monk's father was also denied benefits and is also named in the lawsuit. The Monk family is seeking $1 million in the suit.
Mr. Monk and NVCLR argued that they suffered emotional, dignitary, and psychological harms from being subjected to the VA's racially discriminatory benefits system.
The VA has released several reports in the last year confirming what many have long believed. And the new data from the VA obtained by NBC through a Freedom of Information Act shows that the trend also spanned between 2003 and 2023. Deja Moorhead is part of Monk's legal team from Yale University.
We hope that the court ultimately recognizes the legal duty that VA owed to the Monk family, to generations of black veterans, to administer benefits in a non-discriminatory manner.
Today's hearing was in response to the government's motion to dismiss Monk's case for reasons including a statute of limitations. Gary Monk is Conley's brother and executive director of their organization, National Veterans Council for Legal Redress.
I feel there's a lot of guilt with the country, with what and how they treated the veterans. And so the motion to dismiss doesn't surprise me because, they're continuing to deny us as usual.
Attorneys for the government declined to comment after court. The decision is now up to a federal judge who said it would be a tough decision to make.
We just have to continue to fight. We have a good team, and I pray to God that we win this case.
It's up to that federal judge to make a decision, and he said it would be a tough one. In Bridgeport, I'm Kyle Jones, NBC Connecticut News.
A former VA employee says she tried to make change, but says people made a number of excuses.
And even with a new announcement, she questioned what will be different this time around.
And it was just very difficult because from my perspective, oftentimes when we raised the issues, people just didn't appear to be that interested, and we were confronted with a number of excuses. The data wasn't available, or the data was owned by Veterans Benefit Administration. And so the group that was assigned to help us get the data that we were asking for would say, well, until we get authority from the Veterans Benefits Administration, because it's their data, there's nothing that we can do, or there's minimal things that we can do. So my big question would be is what is going to be different this time? Because there have been so many committees, there have been so many reports, there have been so many independent studies. These are not new issues. So what is going to be different?
Meanwhile, the VA has released its own data when it comes to who receive benefits.
For this fiscal year, the agency says nearly 85% of all black veterans who applied for benefits were given access. That's compared to about 90% of their white counterparts who applied. And while the trend has decreased slightly, a higher percentage of black veterans are still denied benefits than white vets. So was the VA aware of racial disparities in discharge status and medical claims?
NBC's Lucy Bustamante has some answers.
Guys, what I'm holding here are newly released documents dating back to 2017 that one veterans nonprofit group says proves the VA knew there was a big disparity in how many Black veterans were getting denied their PTSD disability claims at a higher rate than white veterans. This report, called the 2017 Grant Rate Analysis of PTSD Disability Claims, shows Black veterans have the highest rate of denial compared to other ethnicities. Only 43% had claims approved in comparison to the national average of 55%. White veterans had a higher rate of approval of 57%, 2 points higher than the national average. But Yale Veterans Legal Services Clinic reports this report was never published for the public to see.
So there was a meeting at some point about the role of minorities in the VA, and it seems like someone pulled together a presentation on that front, and then that presentation wound up not making it anywhere. And then separately, it seems fairly clear to us that they had the data because they have been talking about it. It seems that they had the data, but when we had previously asked for this information, they told us that they didn't have it and it was impossible to collect.
Yale and the Black Veterans Project turned over more than 1,000 documents from the Department of Veterans Affairs, obtained through their lawsuit against the VA for discrimination. They say in this email, for example, top officials decided it wasn't, quote, cost effective to add race and ethnicity fields to the disability claims form every veteran needs to file to get compensated for their service-related disability. Black Veterans Project co-founder Richard Brookshire says these documents show employees reported discrimination concerns to their leaders, but were told not to discuss it over email. Some concerns alleging VA employees tampered with the medical records of Black veterans.
And that person was told not to email them again, right? They weren't saying, thank you for raising this concern. Let's make sure that it's addressed. And it speaks to a culture, I think, of silence and complicity that has often perpetuated itself within the VA that has exacerbated the kind of disparities that we see.
Lucy Bustamante with that report.
When we come back, we'll introduce you to other veterans and their families across the nation who are struggling to secure their benefits after fighting for their country.
NBC stations around the country investigated claims of racial disparity within the VA and how the inequities have impacted the lives of many Black veterans and their families over the years.
From the East Coast and across the plains to right here in California, we'll introduce you to other veterans and their families who are struggling to secure their benefits after fighting for their country.
We're going to begin with the story of Robert Lewis. I sat down with Robert, who shared his story and fight to get much-deserved benefits here in San Diego.
Nobody told me anything. They just gave my discharge papers and bye.
Don't misunderstand Robert Lewis. The San Diego Marine veteran highly values his lifetime of service, his 9 years in the Corps, including deployments in Vietnam, earning a nursing degree through the GI Bill and working 2 decades for the VA, and the volunteer work he does now, which centers on helping fellow vets.
I'm very proud of my accomplishments of helping people.
But over the years, the former Marine gunnery sergeant heard so many stories of fellow Black veterans not always getting the benefits they deserved.
Well, plain English, I didn't think military gave about Black veterans. A lot of it was, I believe, racially motivated.
It wasn't supposed to be this way. The GI Bill, created in 1944, was meant to be offered to all veterans coming back from war, providing education, low-cost mortgages, and disability benefits to help vets integrate back into society and create a strong American middle class. Low-cost mortgage loans were also a rarity for these heroes. In 1947, fewer than 100 loans were given to Black vets in the New York and northern New Jersey suburbs, compared to 67,000 for whites. In a statement to NBC News, the VA admits there have been disparities, but says it is working to bridge the gap. Beyond an imbalance in benefits, a frequent problem we heard over and over from Black veterans was just knowing what was available when leaving service.
Did not explain to you your benefits. You had to learn on your own.
And then sometimes there was the battle to get what was due. Just ask Michael Johnson, another Southern California Marine veteran, 20 years on active duty, leaving the service as a staff sergeant.
I went through the proper procedures to get, VA benefits, and
They only gave me a small portion based on their evaluation of my present situation.
Both Johnson and Lewis say through perseverance, they prevailed. Now, both retired Marines are doing what they say the government system hasn't always done, helping black veterans navigate the system as leaders with the National Montford Point Marine Association, named after the first African Americans to enlist in the Corps. Michael Johnson says he at least is encouraged that more national leaders are finally addressing this historical imbalance.
We Americans, we are patriots, we are veterans, and we did the exact same job as our counterparts.
So, Mark, there's people across the country who are glad to see this issue get national attention, but the question is, what took so long?
I think it's a couple of things, Monica. Number one, the VA was very slow in recognizing how big a problem this was. And secondly, these are members of the greatest generation. These are not people who grew up complaining. So a lot of times, these men and women simply suffered in silence, hoping that there would be changes that would help them down the road.
We are so glad their voices are finally being heard.
And we should also point out there are some success stories out there as well.
Indeed there are. In Philadelphia, veteran Henry Wilcott's story is a stark contrast to that of so many others who have gone decades without the benefits they were owed. Wilcott's was proud to become one of the first black Marines in the United States military. He says he joined because of the benefits of the GI Bill, which promised all veterans returning home from war an education, housing, and unemployment insurance. Wilcott's went on to college and became a successful architect. And he says he was fortunate to be able to walk into the right VA office in the North.
I didn't have to worry about money. My parents didn't have to worry about, how can we send this boy to school?
Getting benefits wasn't as easy for Ronnie Forbes in Northern California.
Right. In fact, he says trying to get his benefits over the years felt as if he was battling almost another war. NBC's Bagad Shaban has his story from the Bay Area.
61-year-old Ronnie Forbes is a veteran of the U.S. Army. He served for nearly 3 years in the late 80s on the tense border between North and South Korea. But he says his most difficult fight was here at home, against the very federal agency created to help soldiers, the VA.
You feel like you're having to fight a whole other battle.
Yeah, a whole nother war.
A war?
Yeah, this is another war of fighting for what is rightfully mine.
Forbes has been caught in a bureaucratic brawl with the Veterans Administration, trying to get compensation for the post-traumatic stress disorder he says he developed as a direct result of his military service.
You're protecting South Korea from North Korea, and it's constant alert. Couldn't sleep at night, hearing all kinds of things and anxiety attacks, and this was all just traumatic for me.
It changed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But over the past decade, his disability claims have been repeatedly denied.
A quitter never wins and a winner never quits.
His file at the VA now stretches more than 2,000 pages.
From beginning,
filled with his lengthy appeal applications and the VA's consistent requests for more documentation.
All right.
Forbes, who is the commander of the Livermore chapter of Veterans of Foreign Wars, says his colleagues with similar medical conditions haven't faced the same struggles in getting their VA benefits.
What was the difference between you and your colleagues who did get these things?
I'm black. They were white.
Yale University analyzed 20 years worth of disability compensation records from the VA and found denial rates for black veterans were disproportionately higher than white vets. That data is being cited in a new lawsuit filed against the VA, accusing the agency of using racial discrimination to deny countless benefit applications from black veterans. A VA spokesperson says the agency is unable to comment on ongoing litigation, but acknowledges unacceptable disparities in veteran benefits decisions due to racism, which have wrongly left black veterans without access to VA care and benefits. The VA adds it is actively working to right these wrongs.
Vowing not to discriminate in the future does not undo the effects of the past.
Historian Richard Rothstein has written extensively about discrimination. His book, Color of Law, details how the federal government's own policies, including at the VA, fueled segregation in every metropolitan area in the country. Beginning in 1944, The GI Bill offered veterans scholarships and government-backed mortgages that meant lower interest rates and less money down. But in the still segregated South, those benefits were often unusable for black soldiers.
When millions of returning war veterans came home, the African Americans did not have the same opportunities that the whites had.
So when we look at the history of the GI Bill, its very creation was inherently discriminatory against black veterans.
And explicitly so, purposely so.
More than half a century later, some lawmakers believe the VA is still in need of major reform. Congressman Jim Clyburn and Seth Moulton proposed the GI Bill Restoration Act, which would allow descendants of black World War II vets to be eligible for the home loans and educational benefits that were supposed to be guaranteed decades ago.
The two best ways to build wealth in America are to get an education and buy a home. So when they're denied to a generation of black veterans, it's going to have a huge economic cost, not just for their generation, but for every generation that comes thereafter.
The GI Bill Restoration Act, which is estimated to cost roughly $70 billion, failed to get enough support last year.
We are benefiting from the sacrifices of some Americans who were not treated fairly.
The VA says it's working to reach out to black veterans to assist them in getting the benefits they're owed. Since 2021, the VA says it has helped more than 650 black veterans navigate the claims process through outreach events across the country. But the VA won't say how many of those veterans ultimately got their claims approved. Soon after we started digging into Forbes' story,
Ronald Anthony Forbes Sr.
He got the letter he had been waiting on for years.
We made a decision on your entitlement to VA benefits. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is granted.
So why the change? The VA wouldn't tell us exactly, only acknowledging it has now determined Forbes suffers from PTSD, after repeatedly saying for more than 8 years he didn't. The approval means Forbes is now receiving monthly payments from the VA. While initially totaling $1,600, the VA later increased it to about $3,600.
I'm just so angry at the fact that it should not have taken this long. And look at all of the things that happened to me and my family.
Forbes says he spent years estranged from his loved ones because of his PTSD. He was homeless and hungry, but now receives counseling and medication.
Will you get another box together?
He also started a nonprofit to help feed the needy, including other veterans.
And what else do we have over here?
Forbes wonders how life for him and other black vets could have been different if the VA approved their claims back when they needed it the most.
This is not about me. Yeah, I do need my benefits for my life and for my family. But nationwide, if they are admitting that they've been doing this, then this has got to stop.
Begad Shaban, NBC Bay Area News.
And these stories are representative of a much larger group of people who served our country but feel like their investment wasn't honored with the benefits they had earned.
We will continue to update this investigation as new developments emerge, whether in the halls of Congress, the federal court system, or within the VA itself.
For now, thanks for watching this special report on American vets, benefits, race, and inequality. I'm Monica Dean, along with Mark Mullen. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.